Oh, hello, hello, hello. I am Zakiya Monique, master relationship strategist, transformational speaker, best-selling author of Killer Connections, and I'm also the illustrious host of the Safe Space and the Resetters Crew. If you need accountability and you're ready to actually achieve some of the goals that we're setting, you definitely want to join us in the Resetters Crew. But you should already be a member of the Safe Space. Safe Space is a complimentary um, membership that helps you kickstart your healing process. And the safe space helps you take it all the way there. I mean, the Resetters Crew helps you take it even further. So if you want more information about that, let me know and we'll get you where you need to be. But welcome to another um, episode, teaching, whatever you want to call it, of the weapons of our spiritual tool chest. And today we're focusing on fasting. Fasting. Um, Fasting has become such a fad, and that's a good and bad thing. Good thing in that more people are doing it and finding the benefits of it, even if it's not spiritual, it's or meant to be spiritual, at least they're doing it, right? But on the flip side, oftentimes we don't get the benefit because it has to be the acceptable fast. So today we're going to focus not so much on the types of fast. That's going to be like an addendum that I'm going to do and probably release around midweek. But more so, we're going to focus on the acceptable fast because my thought process is if we don't get it right, it won't matter which one we do, right? So if we don't focus, like we focus so much on the type of fast and what we got to give up, and we can't eat this and we can't eat that, but we don't focus on the posture and position. So today I want to talk about the posture and position and the rewards, right, of that. I want to talk about the prerequisites. I want to talk about, the frame of mind that we should be in. What does fasting require? That's what I want to talk about today, the foundation of it. And then we can talk about the types of fast because once you know how to do it properly, then you can get into which one are you going to do at which times, right? So that's how I want to handle that. So this will be part one, and then we'll have a second part to the teaching that'll come a little bit later. So let's start off with our scriptures. These are just some scriptures. Like I said, it's never an all-inclusive list when it comes to scriptures of the Bible. Fasting is mentioned so many times in the Bible. I mean, I think like 90 times or something in the Old Testament or something. But it's so many, fasting is referenced often. And that's how it should be in our lives. It should be referenced just as often in our lives, right? It should be a staple. It should be a consistent part of our lives. Um, but I think many of us don't understand it as a tool. We don't understand it as a tool. We understand it as an emergency scapegoat, like, a thing to do when it's an emergency. But have we ever considered the fact that if we're fasting consistently, maybe it wouldn't be so many emergencies? Maybe that's just my thinking. I don't know. But these are just some of the scriptures that you'll hear referenced throughout this teaching and in the second teaching as well. So if you don't hear or see these today, some of these will be referenced, like Ezra will be referenced in the addendum teaching, the second teaching. So if they're not here today, you'll hear them in a different teaching. So let's talk about the definitions of fasting. So this is just the definition generically. So this is not biblical at all. This is just generic. This is just everyday life definition. So to fast is to abstain from all or some kinds of food or drink. Okay. To abstain from all or some kinds of food or drink. Another definition is to abstain from food or drink or both for health, ritualistic, religious, or ethical purposes. Another one says to stop eating completely or partially for a certain stretch of time. So the thing that we can see consistently is it involves food, sometimes it involves drink. It may have different purposes and it's for a certain stretch of time. I think that's the four things that we can deduce from these three definitions, okay? So even if you're not doing it for spiritual purposes, like I believe in intermittent fasting, I think intermittent fasting has amazing benefits. And so intermittent fasting, if I'm not doing it for a spiritual purpose, it still involves these things. It still is to abstain from some type of food or drink for a certain stretch of time. I'm, eating partially, and it is for health reasons, right? So ultimately, this is just a generic definition of fasting. But then we take it to a different level. Fasting defined biblically is this: to refrain from eating and sometimes drinking, but now it's to focus on God. Now you see how the focus changes. It's a means of humbling ourselves before God. Yeah. Putting our flesh under subjection. Is no greater way like to put our flesh under subjection than to not eat or to not drink, right? Because those are things that we need to survive. It is also a spiritual discipline during which we voluntarily reduce or eliminate our food intake for a specific time and purpose. So it takes it to a spiritual level where now we're saying, Lord, we give this up for you. Okay, so that's the definition biblically. Takes it a little bit further and it shifts the focus to God and to the things of God, humbling ourselves before God. A spiritual discipline that says, hey, I'll turn away from food for the purpose of growing closer to God. So all of the biblical definitions are similar to what we just read in the previous slide. However, it takes it a step further. Okay. So let's talk overview. Fasting has spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional benefits. And even if you're doing it spiritually, you still get benefits in the other areas. That's the thing I love. See, if you do it physically, you may not get the spiritual benefit, right? You'll get the, physically, you'll get the mental and the emotional benefits, but you won't get the spiritual benefits. But if you do it spiritually, you get all the benefits. That's the thing I love about it. Spiritually, you get all the benefits. Physical, if you do it the acceptable fast way, let me put it that way. So when you do a spiritual fast, you get all of the rest of the benefits. It's like a domino effect. Like you get the physical, the mental, and the emotional. But if you only do the physical, do it for physical, you may not get all of the other benefits, spiritually, right? So you'll get physical, mental, and emotional, but you won't get the spiritual. Spiritual gives you spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional. That's the thing that I really love about spiritual fasting. In the Hebrew, I thought it was, kind of cute that the Hebrew word for fasting is sum, kind of like tsunami. So I thought about, yeah, it's a tsunami when you giving up that food, the way you feel sometimes, the way you feel sometimes is like a tsunami, I swear. So I thought that was a little bit of a, chuckle, gave me a chuckle. But you see here, Hebrews is to abstain from food, but the Greek is to abstain from food and drink. So sometimes you're abstaining from food, sometimes you're abstaining from food and drink. Listen, when you're doing a spiritual fast, you need to be led spiritually. Okay. And here's why, because an absolute fast can be very dangerous if you're not led spiritually. Okay. Absolute fast is when it's like no water, no food, and that can be dangerous. Like to not drink water or eat food for an extended amount of time, you really need to be led by God, which means that you are having a full dependency on God. And God has told you to do this thing. And we know that God pays for what he orders. So whatever God calls you to do, he equips you to do, so he will sustain you. But if God has not called you, then you need to be very careful with doing fasts like the absolute fast or things like that. Or if you have health conditions or things like, you got to be careful. With me, I had weight loss surgery. And so because I had weight loss surgery, my portions are smaller. I have to pay attention to vitamins and nutrients and things of that nature, just eating regularly. So in fasting, I have to be wise. I have to seek God and say, Lord, what would you have me to do? What would you have me to give up? Because giving up everything can deplete my vitamins. So we have to be very, very careful as to how we take on fasting, even when it's when it's spiritual fast, because you may desire to do an absolute fast, but your body, I remember the first time I did a 3-day fast, by the third day, I was so depleted. Like I was so depleted. All I could do is come home and get into bed. So I had to seek the Lord and say, Lord, what would you have me to do in the way of this? Because I really want to do this fast, but I want to do it the way that is going to be beneficial. It's going to be pleasing to you, but it's also not depleting me, because it took me like 6 days to recover. So please be spirit led. Don't go out here and try to be a fasting champion to prove something to somebody and, faint or something like that. That's not wise. Make sure you're seeking the wisdom of God. Remember, God says that if we ask him, he'll give us wisdom liberally. So make sure you're seeking the wisdom of God and the leading of God in your fasting. And then there are different types of fasting. Like I told you, we're going to get into that in a separate supplemental teaching, because what good is it for us to go into the fast in depth if we don't talk about the acceptable fast? So today, our goal is to talk about the posture, position, and prerequisites, and just how God would have us to do a fast that he would accept. then we can get into what types of fast there are, because if we don't get the acceptable fast down pat, the types of fast won't matter. But there are different types of fast, and we will mention them today, but we will not go in depth. And then spiritual fasting has prerequisites, and we're going to go in depth with those prerequisites in just a few seconds. But we have to understand that the reason why a lot of people do not fast spiritually is because they have not seen results. And the reason why they have not seen results is because they have not done the fast the way that God has told us to do it, which means there are prerequisites. When God tells us to do something a certain way, that's the way he wants us to do it. And when we don't do it that way, then it affects, or it influences our results from him. So some people will say fasting doesn't work for me. It's not that it doesn't work. It's just that you have to learn to do it the acceptable way. We can't just give him any sacrifice any way that we want to give it to him. No, there's an outline. There is a list of things that we have to do. There's certain things that he wants from us in order to prove that this is the acceptable fast from him. And if it's not the acceptable fast and he doesn't accept it, it's no different than Cain and Abel when he accepted Abel's sacrifice, but he didn't accept Cain's. Well, this is the same thing. Some of our sacrifices he's not accepting because they're not truly sacrifices. If you know you already are a vegetarian and you get on the Daniel fast, that's not hurt. That's nothing. That's nothing. You already eat like that. So that's not a sacrifice to God. And then, not getting too deep into some of the types of fast, but some of us will try to fast off social media and that in lieu of fasting from food. No, nowhere in any of the definitions that I see giving up social media. Fasting does not have anything to do with social media. Now, don't get me wrong. You may want to come back off of social media because it has become a distraction. So I can understand you may be afflicting your soul, if that's what you want to call it, that way. But that is not the fast that God called for. God did not call for us to come off social media. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's not in lieu of. Okay, let me put it that way. It is not in lieu of. Now, God will tell you, he may tell you to scale back from social media because it is a distraction, because you're putting too much into it, because social media has become addictive and it's becoming dangerous in terms of the things that you're influencing your eyes and ear gates. However, God is not going to tell us to fast from social media in lieu of food. No. And that's part of the reason why some people are not getting results, because God is like, that is not what I said. That is not what I want. Okay, so let's talk about the types of fast that I'm going to go a little bit deeper into. First and foremost, the absolute fast. Now, when it comes to the absolute fast, this is the dry fast, right? Some people call it the dry fast. Dry fast is no water, no food, nothing. Like you're taking in nothing, okay? Now, the absolute fast, there is evidence of it done in the Bible. Of course, we all know Esther did the dry fast, 3 days. It wasn't just her, though. It was a whole nation. They were all fasting because they were going to be, killed, so it was a death for life situation. And oftentimes when a person does a dry fast, it is, exigent circumstances. Most of the time when you see it in the Bible. I think there was another time, I think they called Saul didn't have food or drink for 3 days after he was knocked off the horse in that Damascus moment. But there are a few others. We're going to go in depth in those where we're going to, I'm going to talk about them in depth. But the absolute fast is a dry fast. Okay, it's a dry fast in which we do not have food, we do not have water. Okay, and so this is the one you really, really, really need to be led by God, because you do not want to hurt yourself or cause more harm than good in doing it. Then we have the standard or the normal fast, and that's the fast in which you may fast from 6 to 6, or you may fast a whole day. And that one you don't have any food, but you may have water, or that type of thing. So that's just a normal fast. It's not absolute as in not having any water. Most of the time, standard fast, you will have some type of water. Maybe you have juice, but some type of fluid you usually have in a standard or a normal fast. Okay. Then there's the partial fast. Now, the partial fast is, most people know it as the Daniel fast. And the Daniel fast is when you eat certain things, but other things you don't. And so the Daniel fast has a lot of controversy because some people kind of interpret what he says as a vegetarian diet. So that, sometimes he said he had pulses, which is vegetables. And so some people say it's vegetarian. Some people say it's anything grown from the ground. We'll go a little deeper in that, but just know that a partial fast is a fast in which you may give up some things, but then you may eat some. So you may give up all juices and sweet drinks and all of that and just have water. And you may give up meats and dairy and these types of things, but you're still going to have vegetables. So you're still eating on your regular schedule. However, you're not eating the same thing. So that's kind of a partial fast. Sometimes a partial fast may be partial in time as well, because maybe you'll do a 6 to 6. So that means I'm still eating today, but I'm not eating all day. So partial can be the foods, partial can be the drinks, and partial can be the time. Okay. With absolute fast, it's absolutely nothing for the whole time, no water, no foods, no water, and it's for the whole time, the whole duration of the fast. The normal fast, you fast for the whole duration of the fast, but you will probably have water. Okay, you'll have water, or some people do fresh juices, from fruit and vegetables or something like that. Okay. And last but not least, there is the corporate fast. The corporate fast is the fast that oftentimes we do with our churches or with our groups. And this is the fast in which people will know that we're fasting. See, the other three, they're not necessarily supposed to know. Okay. And don't get me wrong, the corporate fast may be incorporate any of the three as well. So you may do an absolute fast corporately. I've done that before. You may do a partial fast corporately. You may do a standard fast corporately, but ultimately, when you do any of these corporately, it means that somebody else knows or other people know. See, we're supposed to fast in secret. We're not supposed, this is supposed to be a sacrifice that we don't go around telling everybody about. But when it's a corporate fast, everyone in that corporation, in that group knows, right? So other people will know about that fast. But if it's just a fast that's private, an absolute fast, a standard fast, or a partial fast that's private, then that's just for you. And maybe if God allows you to reveal it to your prayer partner or your husband, of course, because if you're married, you have to get permission to fast, because you're fasting from sex as well. And so you may tell your husband or you may tell a few people, but you don't go out and tell everybody, oh my gosh, I've been fasting for 10 days. Oh my goodness, I'm on day number 15. No, because it tells you that you have gotten your reward if you do that, to, let men know what you're doing. And so again, we'll get deeper into those in a separate teaching, but let's talk about the prerequisites of fasting. The prerequisites. Number one is humility. Now, why does it take humility? Okay, and again, the bulk of what we're talking about today is Isaiah 58. And so if we look at Isaiah 58, one of the first things he talked about is the posture of how they were handling things, the posture of how they were fasting. Let me grab my other Bible. Hold on one second. So, when we look at Isaiah 58, one of the things that he says in the very beginning that stuck out to me as humility is he says, shout it. Oh, well, let me read it in the King James first. Cry aloud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgressions and the house of Jacob their sins. Yet they seek me daily and delight to know my ways, as a nation that did righteousness and forsook not the ordinance of their God. They ask of me the ordinances of justice. They take delight in approaching to God. Wherefore have ye fasted? Have we fasted, say they, and thou seest not? Wherefore have we afflicted our souls, and thou takest no knowledge? Behold, in the day of your fast, ye find pleasure and exact all of your labors. So the first thing that stuck out to me was they looked at him and said, well, you don't accept our sacrifice? That's not humble. That's not humble. To go to God and say, Lord, what am I getting wrong? Or is it something I can change? Is it something I'm misunderstanding? Is one thing. But to go to him and say, well, we fasted and you haven't taken delight. You haven't taken delight in our approach to God. You haven't taken delight in what we're doing. Why? So that tells you right there, and God is like, well, let me tell you why, because surely if you ask, you're going to receive. So it says, behold, ye fast for strife and debate, and to smite with the fist of wickedness. Ye shall not fast as ye do this day, to make your voice be heard on high. So first thing he said is you proud, you prideful. You have an ungodly pride, a pride about you, because you want your voice to be heard on high. You want your voice to be heard on high. The New International says, why have ye fasted, they say, and ye have not seen it? Why have we humbled ourselves and you have not noticed it? Come on, that's not humility. He says, yet on the day of your fast, you do as you please and exploit all your workers. That's not humble. They didn't even have a humble posture about them, even in going to him to see why it wasn't working. Humility is required because we are to go to him, first of all, believing that he is. So if fasting is a way that we humble ourselves before God, when we humble ourselves before God, we go before him and believe that he is, and he's a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. So if we're seeking something from God because we're fasting, which means we're seeking something deeper, something higher, something better, something more from God, then we don't go to him with ungodly pride. We come to him humbly. As I told you before, there's a time when we come to him boldly, but even in our boldness, we still come for mercy. And so we have to be careful. The New American Standard says, they ask me for just decisions. They delight in the nearness of God. Why have we fasted and you do not see? Why have we humbled ourselves and you do not notice? He said, because behold, on the day of your fast, you find your desires. Pride will make you say, I come first. Pride will make you say, I'm gonna do what I want. Pride will make you fall in line with the flesh. And this is what they were doing. This is exactly what they were doing. And this is sometimes what we do. We don't want to fast because we want to do what we want to do, eat what we want to eat, go where we want to go, say what we want to say, watch what we want to watch, hear what we want to hear. We want to do what we want to do. But fasting requires, the acceptable fast requires that we bring all of that under the subjection and we come humbly before God. We come humbly before God. If we go down a little further I'll read the New International Translation. He says, is this the kind of fast I have chosen? Only a day for a man to humble himself? Is this is it only for bowing one's head like a reed and for lying on sackcloth and ashes? He's saying, listen here. You ain't even coming to me right. You're not even coming to me right. He says, this is a day that to fast like I want you to fast is a day where you afflict your soul, where you bow your head like bulrush and spread sackcloth and ashes underneath you, meaning that you are humble, you are brokenhearted. You not coming to me proud like you got it together. Why you're not accepting my sacrifices? No, you come humbly. So humility is a prerequisite of fasting, and this is why many times we can't get it because we've gone so long without fasting, we've gone so long without praying, we've gone so long without worship that we've allowed pride to just raise up in us. So then we don't come to God in the way that we're supposed to, which means we do not get the results that we wish. Okay, so humility is one. Giving is another. Giving is another, because if we look at the seventh verse, it says, is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood? Giving is a prerequisite of fasting, or I won't say necessarily a prerequisite, but we are to give in the midst of fasting. It requires us to give. So as we fast and as we humble ourselves before God, we should be seeking an opportunity to give and to bless another and to clothe the naked and to feed the hungry and to help the poor. We should be looking for a way to give. Again, this is not taught oftentimes. I know I didn't learn it for many, many years. I was just taught to fast and keep it moving. I was never, ever taught to give as part of my fasting. Not until maybe last year, unfortunately. And I've been in church since I was a kid. Okay, but giving is a part of our fasting. A prerequisite is the desire for depth in and with God. A desire for it. When we come to him, we should be coming to him to get the more of him. Coming to him because we desire his wisdom. We desire his heart. We desire his way. We desire his will. We desire his word. And so when we come to him fasting, what we're saying is, when we say afflicting my soul, when I afflict my soul, I tell my mind no. I tell my will no. I tell my emotions no. And I say, God, I exchange those for what you want. I want your will, your way, your word. So I put down mine because I have a desire for a higher and a deeper depth in you. That's the posture that we're supposed to have, not the posture of coming to check God about why we're not getting the rewards. And then a broken and contrite heart. We come to him with a broken heart. Why? That's where the sackcloth and ashes and all of that comes from. Broken heart. Why? Because God, even our righteousness is but filthy rags. Broken and contrite heart for those around us that are falling away. Broken and contrite heart for the state of our world that is lost. Does that mean that we walk around with our head low and hung down all the time? No, no. But as we come to him fasting, the reason why we come to him fasting is to lift this up. It's to lift this broken and contrite heart, because there's no way that if we're truly living in the world, but we're not of it, our hearts are going to be broken because of what we see, because of what we hear, because of the evil that we know doesn't have to happen, but because of free will, it does. And so when we come to him for the purposes, we're going to talk about the purposes next, but when we come to him, usually we're coming with a broken heart, with a contrite heart, with a heavy heart. We're coming to him for a desire, a depth into a better understanding. We're coming to him humbly. And in the midst of that, we give. Okay? So let's talk about the purpose of spiritual fasting. The purpose of spiritual fasting. To afflict the soul. Why? Because our mind will tell us, to do something different. We every day, I tell you this all the time. Every day there is a fight. There's a fight every single day. And that fight is between the spirit and the soul. The spirit and the flesh over the soul. The spirit and the flesh over the soul. There's a war every day. And so the war is, will my mind be under the subjection of the Holy Spirit or not? Will my will be under the subjection of the Holy Spirit or not? Or will my emotions be under the subjection of the Holy Spirit or not? And if not, they're under the subjection of the flesh, which says, do it. Cuss her out. Go off. Tell them how you feel. But God may be saying, be quiet. Let me handle it. I'll be your avenger. We tell him, nah, you take too long. I'm going to cuss her out today. Your will may say, I'm not going to get up and pray. I'm not getting up to exercise. I'm not getting up to do the thing that God told me to do. But God's will say, get up and do it anyway. I'll give you strength. And we'll tell him, nah, not today. Our minds may go all kinds of places depending on what we've allowed it to be subjected to. We watch TV. We watch all these things. Television is called programming for a reason. So we'll watch programs and get programmed. We watch all kinds of stuff on social media. We watch all kinds of stuff. And then we wonder why our mind just regurgitates those things to us. And we're like, where did this come from? It came from what you allowed it to be subject to. And so at some point, we should be regularly afflicting our soul to bring our mind, will, and emotion up under the subjection of the word of God, under the will of God, under the way of God, so that we will stay in the will of the Lord. So that we will continue to match our will with his. So that we will continue to say, Lord, I don't want free will. My free will, the only part of free will that I want is I choose you. That's it. Everything else is what you choose because you know best. And so the purpose of a spiritual fast is to afflict your soul, is to make your emotions stay their hand, because emotions will have you all over the place. But when you go into a fast will calm those emotions. It will calm the storm. Okay. Another purpose of spiritual fasting, and all of these can be found almost word for word in Isaiah 58. So I took these word for word for a reason. Okay, for a reason, because I wanted us to know this is exactly what it is. Like, to loose the bands of wickedness. To loose the bands of wickedness. Okay, it's so much wicked in us and around us. In us and around us. But the only way that we can really and truly cause it to flee is through a fast. The Bible said this kind come but by fasting and praying. When they could not cast out. Why? Because they needed some more strength and they needed more than prayer. He said, this kind come but by fasting and prayer. That means you got to put something extra with it. That's why oftentimes we hear prayer and fasting, because when something doesn't loose with prayer, we have to put fasting with it. And that combination together, those tools together, we have to learn how to put these tools together that we're learning about. Let's learn how to put it together. Okay. I'm trying to find the part where in the different. I'm reading these from different translations for a reason because it gives more insight in some of the translations. But it says that's verse 6. So this is verse 6 of Isaiah 58. To loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens. That's another one. When we are heavy, especially right now in the world, when we're heavy, many of us, especially depression, all these things, we can shake these things off. We can fast them away, whether you believe it or not. To undo the heavy burdens. What do you think heavy burdens are? Depression, oppression. You know, we can fast and literally break those things. We can break the bands of wickedness in us, the bands of wickedness outside us, around us, and our children. We can undo the heavy burden of oppression and depression. We can let the oppressed go free. So our loved ones, we can fast and pray for our loved ones and those that can't pray for themselves because they can't identify the stronghold that they're under. That's the power that fasting has. And this is all word for word in Isaiah 58 verse 6. Verse 6. All of this is in verse 6, with the exception of the afflicted soul part. Afflicted soul is in verse 5. All this is word for word right there. To break every yoke, to break the yoke of bondage. When something has you under bondage, addiction, for instance, you can break it. You can break it. If you've been eating too much sweets or too much something, go on a fast. It'll break it. This is why we need fasting consistently. To afflict our souls, to keep our souls under the subjection of the spirit, because it's a fight every day. To loose the bands of wickedness in us and around us. To undo the heavy burdens of seeing all the stuff that we're seeing in the world, especially in this year. To let the oppressed go free. The oppressed are our loved ones, our children, those that seem to just, the world seem to have a hold on them. And to break every yoke, the yoke of bondage, the bondage of witchcraft, the bondage of addiction, we can break it through fasting. The world will tell you that there's no cure for narcissism. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. God just needs a vessel. He needs a vessel that'll fast. He needs a vessel in the earth. Just like he needed a vessel when Jesus came, he needs a vessel in the earth to fast for that individual, to pray for that individual, and God will do it. He can break it. We just can't. And when something is hard in the world will say there's no cure, there's no way to do it. But God says, yes, there is. It's just that we can't break it. He has to. So he just needs a vessel to come to him, to pour out a vessel that will do the things that his word says, because he can't break his word. He puts his word above himself. He won't break it. So he needs a vessel that will do that thing in the earth so that he can do the thing in the heavens. Because everything happens spiritually before it happens naturally. So these are the purpose. This is the purpose of spiritual fasting. And this is why we need to do it on a regular basis, because there's wickedness around us all the time. Heavy burdens around us all the time and in us all the time. Oppression is rampant. Depression is rampant. And bondage is rampant. And so therefore, as this world continues to be sin sick, as this world continues to spiral out of control, there's no way that we can make it without spiritual fasting. And that's why we see so much oppression and depression around us now. Okay? And last but not least, to go deeper in God. To go deeper in God. Because guess what fasting does? When we push down that flesh and we say no to the flesh and we say yes to God, the more we say yes to God, the more we declare that he is, and he is the God over our life. He rewards us. He shows up. He shows up. And we can find that, because I want to make sure everything is tied to the scripture. I want you to understand that this is all in the scripture. In verse 9, he says, then shalt thy call. This is after he has deemed our fast acceptable. And the Lord shall answer. Thou shalt cry, and he shall say, here I am. If thou take away from the midst of thee the yoke, the putting forth of the finger and speaking vanity, and if thou draw out thy soul to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted soul, then shall thy light rise in obscurity and thy darkness be as in noonday. He says, I will take darkness away from you. Darkness as in noonday. In noonday, there is no darkness. So he's saying, I will take darkness from your midst, which means I will bring revelation. If something's no longer dark, there is a light to it. And when something is light, I get it now. I see it now. It cannot be hidden anymore. And so he's saying, I'll let you go to deeper depths in me, but you got to give me what I asked for first. You have to give me the fast the way that I asked for it, or I don't see it as a sacrifice. And if it's not a sacrifice to me, then hey, if it's not one to you, it's not one to me. So spiritual fasting absolutely helps us to go deeper in God. Okay. Now let's talk about the rewards of fasting. The rewards, all of this is right here in the same scriptures. Same scriptures. And it's amazing how we will go like so many years and not know it. I was so amazed when I first saw it. Like I felt cheated. I felt like, wow, nobody told me the whole story. You know what I'm saying? As a child, as a teenager growing up, nobody told me the whole story. Okay. So if God accepts your fast as the acceptable fast, if you do all that he's asked you to do, if you satisfy all of the prerequisites, okay, which we've already read, okay, where he says, hey, is this not the fast that I've chosen? A day for a man to afflict his soul. So if we have afflicted our soul, is it to bow our head like bulrush, spread sackcloth and ashes, meaning that we come to him with a broken and contrite heart. Okay. To loose the bands of wickedness. So we're doing it for the purposes that he set forth, not for greedy purposes for all of us to get everything we want. Lord, I want a car. Let me go on a fast. Now, if he instructs you to do that, maybe there's a reason, but this is not about material gain. This is not about us getting what we want. You know what I'm saying? This is not about that. He's telling us the reasons why. We're loosing the bands of wickedness. We're undoing the heavy burden. Let the oppressed go free. Breaking the yoke. Going deeper in God. If we do all of this and we give and make sure that the hungry and the people that he puts in our path are taken care of, that we give to people, then these are the rewards that we can look forward to. Okay, these are the rewards that we can look forward to, because in verse 8, he says, then. So if after you do, remember, God is an if-then God. People don't like to hear that, but this is the truth. He's conditional. His love is not, but he is. Okay, his rewards are. Okay, his love is not, but his rewards are. Okay, it's almost like you can love somebody unconditionally, but that don't mean that I just tolerate your foolishness. Okay, I love you, but tolerance is not unconditional, but my love for you is. Well, with God, he's still conditional in terms of, I will give you if you do this. So if we do the things that he outlined that we've discussed, verse 8 says, then shall thy light break forth in as the morning. Okay, so now light gonna break forth as the morning. Oh, okay. Light breaks forth as the dawn. Okay. Then what? Health springs forth speedily. So basically, God is saying, I'll restore you. I'll take the darkness away. I'll restore you. So not only will you get revelation, but I'll restore the light in you. I'll restore the light in you. I'll renew you. I'll forgive you. I'll restore you. I'll revive you. And then your health will spring forth quickly. What health? Your physical health, your emotional health, your mental health, your spiritual health. It will all spring forth speedily. One of the versions that I read, that's why I like to read the different versions. It says, if you get rid of your, oh, wait a minute, let me see. It says, do this and the lights will turn on and your lives will turn around at once. Your righteousness will pave the way. Then when you pray, God will answer. Okay, I'm gonna go a little bit. Wait, that's not the right one. Okay, it says, I got like six different versions here. It says here, then your light will break forth like the dawn and your healing will quickly appear. The other one, New American Standard, says, then your light will break out like the dawn and your recovery will speedily spring forward. What else? Righteousness shall go before thee. He's restoring us. So not only it says your righteousness, your justice, and your right relationship with God. Your justice. The glory of the Lord will be thy rear guard. The glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. So when I looked at this one in King James, this is verse 8. It reads in King James, it says, then shall thy light break forth as the morning, and thine health shall spring forth speedily, and thy righteousness shall go before thee, and the glory of the Lord shall be thy reward. Okay, that's what it says in the King James Version. But then when you go over to the Amplified, the New American, and the New International, they all say your rear guard. So I was like, well, wait a minute. And I recently heard a young lady preach about the rear guard, and I had never heard of it. I had never heard of it because I always read the King James, which says rear ward, like your rear ward. So I was like, I thought it was like a reward. I thought they were just saying reward. But no, your rear guard is I'll guard you from the back, from your past. So I'll guard you from the things of your past so they won't blindside you. Things from your past won't come back and tackle you. As long as you have done what? As long as you have turned. See, a true spiritual fasting will break the addiction. It will break the things. And when it breaks it, it's up to us not to go back. And so as long as it has been broken and we don't turn around and go back, guess what? The glory of the Lord will be our rear guard. So that means that the things of the past that we've sown into, he says, I'll be your rear guard. I won't let it come. I had never heard of this, y'all. I had never heard of this. I'm telling you, I felt so cheated. Because many of us look at the past and we're so afraid that the past will come back for us. But I'm telling you that when we truly do the acceptable fast, it's not coming. Because if we truly, and I'm talking about when I say make it a part of our lives. Because if we continue to fast, then that addiction can't come back. Why? Because I continue to keep it down. I continue to keep it down. I continue to keep it down. The glory of the Lord will be thy rear guard. The Lord shall answer and guide thee continually. It says, then shalt thou call, this is verse 9, and the Lord shall answer. Thou shalt cry, and he shall say, here I am. If thou take away from the midst of thee the yoke and the putting forth the finger and speaking vanity, and if thou draw out thy soul to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted soul, then shall thy light rise in obscurity and thy darkness as the noonday, and the Lord shall guide thee continually and satisfy thy soul in drought. Even when there's a drought, he says, I will make sure that you will never thirst. I will make sure that you are never hungry, whether that's metaphorically or physically. I will satisfy your soul in drought. I will satisfy you and make thy bones fat. I will satisfy you. That's powerful. That is so powerful. I'm telling you, I felt so cheated because I had never heard these things. Looking at a different version, it says, if you get rid of unfair practices, quit blaming victims, quit gossiping about other people's sins, if you're generous with the hungry and start giving yourself to the down and out, your lives will begin to glow in the darkness. Your shadowed lives will be bathed in sunlight. I will always show you where to go. I'll give you a full life in the emptiest of places, firm muscles and strong bones. That's amazing to me. I just have to take a pause because I'm telling you, it don't matter what goes on around us when we have made spiritual fasting one of our regular tools that we use all the time. Because he says, I'll satisfy you regardless of what's going on. I know people who prospered in the midst of the pandemic. And I was one of them. Thank God. All praise to God. All praises to God. Because I didn't know what was going to go down. But he took care of me. And I took care of his people. And so he's saying here, hey, there are some rewards. Here are more. There are more. There are more. If you think that's it, no, there are more. Thou shalt be like a watered garden. Like a watered garden. He said, you should be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. That means you never dry up. This is why I don't worry about people stealing my content. You know, somebody told me one day, I was telling them, I said, you know, the Lord is calling me to go live. And they said, girl, you better not go live. They're going to steal your content. And I said, well, they might, you know, they might. And listen, I'm here to tell you that they have. Okay. People have. You know, a lady once said, if you're not ready to be, you know, copied, you're not ready to be an original. So, you know, and I know that there's nothing new under the sun, but there's a different way that we can present it. So, but I never worried about that because I truly believe that when God calls you, he equips you and he'll always give you what you need. And so ultimately, it was so many years before I actually talked about the same thing twice. Honestly, I think I had made over 400 videos before I talked about the same thing twice. Because God had given me what I needed. He just always had, and he still does. So you don't have to worry about somebody stealing what's yours, you know, stealing what God gave you or nothing. Why? You're a well-watered garden. Well-watered. That don't mean barely watered. That means abundance. Well-watered. Okay? Well-watered is the way that it's said it. Water never drying up. Never drying up. So you don't have to worry about, oh, they took this. No, a spring of water whose water fails not. And then your generations will be fruitful. And you will be called the repairers of the breach. How did I get that? Well, let's go to verse 12. And they that shall be of thee, isn't that your generations? And they that shall be of thee. Who is thee? The one who does the spiritual fasting, the acceptable fast the way that God wanted it done. So that's me and you. So if we do the acceptable fast the way that God said he wanted it done, then those that are of us, which are our generation, what are they going to do? It says they shall build the old waste places. They shall build the old waste places. They will rebuild ancient ruins. Things that people said couldn't be done, they'll do it. Ancient ruins, stuff that people said couldn't, oh no, you know, old rubble of past lives to build anew is another way that they said it. Folks said that can't be done. Our generations come along and do it. But then it calls us the repairs of the breach. It says, and thou is us. Thou shalt be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of the paths to dwell in. Repair of the broken walls, restorer of streets with dwelling. Repairers of the breach. Repairers of the breach. Which means we help restore people to the kingdom. Because it's been a breach. And the breach is called sin. It's been a major breach. But repairers of the breach, we're the ones that get them back to the fold, get them back to the kingdom. Get them back to the original plan of God. That's a repair of the breach. Break the generational curses in our family. That's a repair of the breach. And in this one, I had, I'm telling you, I had never. It says, if thou turn away thy foot from the Sabbath, from doing thy pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, the holy of the Lord honorable, and shall honor him, not doing thine own ways, nor finding thine own pleasures, nor speaking thine own words, then shalt thou delight thyself in the Lord, and I will cause thee to ride upon the high places of the earth, and feed thee with the heritage of Jacob thy father, for the Lord For the mouth of the Lord hath spoken this. For the mouth of the Lord hath spoken this. It says, then you, another translation says, I will make you ride on the heights of the earth, and I will feed you with the heritage of Jacob your father. Another one says, then you will find your joy in the Lord, and I will cause you to ride on the heights of the land and to feast on the inheritance of your father Jacob. Another one says, then you'll be free to enjoy God. Oh, I'll make you ride high and soar above it all. I'll make you feast on the inheritance of your ancestor Jacob. Yes, God says so. So these are the things that fasting brings, what it requires. This is the acceptable fast. Okay, we cannot continue to give God just a haphazard fast where we're not praying, we're not doing anything that focuses on him, but then we expect all of these rewards. We don't fast to move the hand of God. We don't fast to move nothing in God. We fast to move us. We don't fast to move the hand of God. We've been told that for so long. Fasting moves the hand of God. No, fasting moves us out the way. It moves us out of the way. It moves our mind, our will, and our emotions out of the way so that then we can hear. That's what happens is when you put it under the subjection of God, now you can hear. When you turn away from the distractions of the world, now you can hear what he was saying all along. God is not going to compete. He's not going to compete. And so as a result, when we fast, we move those things out of the way that have been getting between us, including sin, whether it's sin or distractions or anything that's in the way. We move those things out of the way. And when we move them out of the way, now we can hear. So we're not moving God. We're not moving him. We're seeking him. And when we seek him, we shall find him. It tells us that, but we're not moving him. He's not moved. As we can see in the word, it says that it told us when I read which verse was that? I think that was verse 9. When I said it says when then when you pray, God will answer. See, it does not move him. He says, then when you pray, because you're fasting, but then when you pray, God will answer. You'll call out for help and he'll say, here I am. That means fasting don't move him. Fasting don't move him. Seeking is what gets his attention. When we seek him, when we go to him and we believe that he is and he's a rewarder of them that diligently seek him, when we seek him, when we give a sacrifice and the offering of fasting to him, that's when he says, here I am. But if fasting moved him, then we wouldn't have to pray and call out for help. He would just be moved to come to us. Understand, fasting is one of the most powerful tools that we have. But it is one of the most underused and misunderstood tools. And that's the reason why many of us do not get the very results that we would like. So if you have any questions, let me know. And we will stop the recording at this time for prayer. Remember, there will be a part 2, Lord willing, to this, where we will go in depth into the different types of fasts, so that you will kind of see the different fasts and how people did them and what the rewards of them were. And we'll have that. That'll be under separate cover, though. Okay.